for Bradley Chubb and Jeff Wilson.
I really liked it. I liked, obviously, the Chubb trade is the one that drew the big headlines, but this is a team that when they were 3-0 and they were coming off a win against the Bills, the offense was playing really well. A week later, Tua goes down with a concussion, or technically 2 weeks later, however you want to phrase that. But when they were 3-0, they looked like legitimate contenders, or a team that could stick around and create some noise in the playoffs. And I think they're starting to climb back into that conversation once more. So what are they going to have to do when they get into the playoffs? If somebody is going to take down these two juggernauts, the Chiefs and the Bills, you're going to have somebody who can create some havoc against the quarterback. So bringing in Chubb is a smart move. And then the other reason why I like that is because, when they made the Tyreek Hill trade, they extended him almost immediately. So there's precedent to think that the Dolphins did this knowing that there was a very high likelihood that they're going to get an extension done, and this wasn't a first-round pick for a half-season rental. And then with Wilson, I mean, his experience with McDaniel, I think their running back depth just improved after trading away Edmonds earlier in the day. So I think it was a really solid day for the Dolphins.
Who do you think improved their team the most? And not just on the moves that were made today, going back to McCaffrey and other moves that we've seen over the last week or so. Who do you think improved their team the most up until the deadline today?
Well, I think I don't want to regurgitate everything I just said about the Dolphins, but they're certainly up there. And, we've talked about McCaffrey at length. The guy scored, 72 touchdowns on Sunday. So that was kind of proving how worth it that was. I mean, now that he got a full week's worth of practice, what he can do with that team, you see the potential that they have on offense. You know that if the defense can get healthier, they can potentially match that. So that's a team that, because of what they did at the trade deadline, what are you trying to do at the trade deadline? You're trying to make sure that you become a championship contender. I think the 49ers solidified themselves there. And then, it's kind of coming up the rear, somewhat distant, but I like what the Vikings did and able to basically steal Hawkinson away from the Lions. I really didn't understand the trade or the strategy behind it for the Lions' perspective. But now you take a team that its offense is improving. You know what Kevin O'Connell can do, and you've had a void at tight end, at least statistically all season. Bringing in Hawkinson kind of raises that bar. I don't think they're necessarily a championship contender, but Hawkinson is under contract for an extra year. So you're just continuing to build what O'Connell has kind of put in place here through the first half of the season.
Jeff Howe from The Athletic joins us, Cattles and Ramie here on Sactown Sports. Jeff, which team didn't make a trade that surprised you with their lack of action and you thought they should have stepped up?
I always think the Rams are going to trade with somebody for something. I mean, even if it's just out of pure boredom, you're going to flip a pick for something. So that was really surprising because, you know what? It's also like you understand it to an extent. I mean, their entire offensive line needs to be overhauled. You can't realistically improve the line at the trade deadline, at least in mass pieces or mass quantity, I guess. Kind of surprised they didn't try to bring in another receiver. Whatever the case, I mean, they're a team that's trying to make sure that they stay in it. Obviously, because they want to defend their Super Bowl title, but because of that, or part of that process is to make themselves continue to be an attractive spot for Odell Beckham if and when he's cleared later in the season. So I'm kind of surprised that they weren't able to go out and do that. You can talk about the Packers not making a move. They tried to get Claypool. They just got outbid by the Bears. But again, when the Rams are silent, knowing that they were trying to get some stuff done, it's surprising that they couldn't.
You never want to say a guy's seat is hot in his first year as a head coach. Can we say Josh McDaniels' seat getting a little warm with what went down in New Orleans this weekend?
I'm still going to push back on that one. But look, the New Orleans game was inexcusable. The effort wasn't there. There were times when, I think it was that long Kamara run when he kind of backed into the end zone. To put it kindly, the Saints on that particular play and others had a lot more effort than the Raiders. And that's something that you certainly don't want to see when a team is kind of struggling to keep its season afloat. And then, I mean, it's just Derek Carr is not playing as well as I think he should be. But how much of that is on him and how much of it is on the fact that the offensive line's not overly good? So, look, I still think they're building something. I really do. But the loss in New Orleans was inexcusable.
Jeff Howe is with us here from The Athletic, of course. He is on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Jeff, so much attention being paid recently to New England, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, the quarterback
quote-unquote controversy. Is Zach Wilson actually in danger of losing his gig in New York after a brutal start on Sunday?
Well, they came out and said, I think it was Saleh who said that under no circumstances are they going to replace Zach Wilson this season, barring an injury, of course. But he needs to play better. And the big concern here, they're 5-3. They still absolutely have a chance to stay in the playoff conversation. But the thing that concerns me is, they lose probably their best offensive lineman and Breece Hall the same day, 9 days ago at this point. This is an offense that built its identity on the ground, and to take your best running back and potentially your best offensive lineman away so quickly, and then to put all the emphasis, or to put a whole lot more emphasis on Zach Wilson, clearly he wasn't able to deliver. He had a good start against the Patriots on Sunday, but then it had a catastrophic middle and end, and he was the big reason why they lost that game. If they continue to put that much pressure on Zach Wilson and he doesn't deliver, he's not going to lose his job, I don't think, by the end of the season. But if they, let's say they only finish with 6 or 7 wins, that you really truly bottom out and you don't see progress from Wilson, you probably have to start thinking about where you want to draft a quarterback next year.
Is everything fixed in Denver with the big win in London and Russell Wilson let's riding again?
Oh, geez, no. And so look, it's weird because I just wrote this in the Chubb trade evaluation. Like, just that trade in the vacuum, I like it. I think the Broncos had to do it. You have to be realistic with where your season is going. But the one reason, you can't look at these things in a vacuum is you have to wonder, how is this going to impact the locker room? Now, yeah, you're professionals. You have to understand this is a business. But these guys are also people. And especially on defense, you're playing lights out. I think the second fewest points allowed this season. Their 2 wins earlier in the season, they would have been 0-7 if it weren't for, before Sunday, before that Jacksonville win. They would have been 0-7 if not for the defense holding the other team to 9 and 10 points. It's 16-9 win and 11-10 win. So this is a defense that's playing really well. And then they were really excited about Chubb and his ability to kind of break out because he was healthy for the first time since his rookie year. So one of the more exciting players on that side of the ball, and then you move him for something else. And you got to sit there and say, the next 4 games that they've got coming up, they've got 2 that they could potentially win, and then they've got 2 against AFC teams. I think it's the Titans and the Ravens in there, where you're going after teams in the AFC that you need to at least catch or pass if you want to get yourself into the playoffs. I'm not saying that they were guaranteed to turn it around. I'm not even saying that there was enough on Sunday to have any sort of belief or substance behind the idea that they can go 3-1 or even 4-0 over that stretch before you play the Chiefs a couple times down the stretch. But when you remove a player of Chubb's caliber, you're going to have a whole lot of defensive guys who are already probably looking across the other side of the ball at the offense, wondering when they're going to hold up their end of the bargain. And then they're going to sit there and say, well, what are we doing this for? Because if you're just going to trade one of the best players on this side of the ball away, what is the end game with this team this year? So you really got to figure, I'm going to be fascinated to see how the defense finishes out the stretch, because they're talented, but they've got to be extremely frustrated.
His name is Jeff Howe. He's a gentleman. He's a scholar. Jeff, we'll talk to you next week, man. We appreciate you.
Of course, appreciate you.